Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amer Khan and I look at marketing and community at Stacklet, the company behind the open source project Cloud Custodian. Thank you so much for joining us today live, or if you're watching a recording of this afterwards. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're joining us live, if you want to put in the chat your name and where you're joining us from, that'd be great. Let's make it a bit more engaging. Today's topic is ways to efficiency, avoiding costly mistakes and optimizing cloud usage. We all know there are two core levers of optimizing cloud costs, right? One is the rate and the other one is usage. Rate covers your RI plans, your saving plans, you negotiate rates with your provider. Usage is more about engaging with your engineering teams, keeping the waste down, reducing existing waste, and so on. For this webinar, we'll be focused on the usage piece. And today we have a guest speaker, David Linthicum. Thank you, David, for joining us. As you probably have read an article by David once a week. So David is a pretty renowned influencer and thought leader and practitioner on cloud computing for the past few decades. Previously, David was the chief strategy officer at Deloitte. He also frequently writes for InfoWorld and other syndications as well, pretty much a couple of times a week. And his new book came out too that I don't know if you can see from the back in his back, Cloud Computing Insider as well. You can have a look at that as well. Before I go in the webinar, I just wanted to give some context. Stacklet did a research recently that came out today, actually. We conducted a research of over 315 professionals where the role was either around cloud infrastructure, cloud operations, or FinOps, cloud optimization. And as part of this, the story that David is going to tell, he's going to be using a lot of the trends from it, where he's going to quote some waste stats. He's going to talk about the costly mistakes that development teams are making in the cloud. So just wanted to set some context up, like all the stats that he's sharing over the next few slides are part of this survey. And it just got out today. I'll put out a link for that later on as well. With that, David, I'll let you take it over.
Well, thank you very much. I think this is probably one of the most important webinars I've done in a long period of time. I always put the things I write and speak about in two categories, things where I'm defining the problem or I'm defining the solution. And in this webinar, we're going to define the solutions. In other words, the ability to optimize your existing cloud usage and just make things work better and bring more value back to the business. So just as a quick summary, and I wrote about this in my book as well, over the last 10 years, we've been leveraging cloud and somewhat successful, but there's been a lot of under optimization of existing resources. We're just not using storage, compute, databases, other resources out there in the way that we should, and therefore we're not returning cost value back to the business. So ultimately, we have to take a look at how we're using the cloud and the cost governance systems that we have and the ability to apply automated mechanisms to bring us to a state of efficiency, which we haven't hit for the last 10 years. In fact, some things are getting so bad that people are hitting the eject button on the cloud and coming back to some of the on-prem systems. And really, this is all about self-inflicted wounds. In other words, we're working with technology that we control. We have the ability to adopt efficiencies and modernization techniques and the ability to monitor systems in a way where we understand everything that's going on and the ability to automate ways in which we're going to make these things more optimized. And it's beyond me why many enterprises haven't really picked up on that. So they're doing things in a haphazard way. They migrated to the cloud in doing massive migrations of different applications. Nothing was normalized. And all the inefficiencies are sitting out there and just waiting to be solved. And you can return millions and millions of dollars back to your business if you just take this on. So why is this important? Cloud usage optimization, because it's often not thought of anymore. Just in the cloud conferences, places like reInvent and Microsoft Ignite, things like that, you hear the O word that wasn't spoken in years past, the optimization word. And that's because they're getting feedback from their user base, people who are consuming their technology, that they're unable to leverage the cloud at the cost optimization, at the value optimization that they thought they would be gaining. So as I put in my book, people are spending about 2.5 times what they thought they were going to be spending on the cloud. If you ask somebody what were the benefits of the cloud 10, 15 years ago? It would be cost optimization, the ability to reduce cost, operational costs, CapEx versus OpEx, things like that. That hasn't come about. And so in a serious way, in many instances, cloud is much more expensive than the on-prem counterparts, and it doesn't have to be. So core to this presentation is understanding that the problems exist, but also understanding there's solutions out there you can leverage, such as Stacklet, to bring more optimization to the system. So within the survey, 78% surveyed professionals estimated that more than 20% of the cloud costs were wasted. I'm seeing the same thing as well. Ultimately, they're not looking at optimization for making this happen. Performance and scalability, they're not looking at proper optimization that ensures resources or meet performance requirements. In other words, they know the resources are there, they know they're expensive, but there's no optimization processes and automation around how they're leveraging those resources. And they're doing so in a haphazard way. There was not a structured plan in terms of how they're building, deploying, leveraging applications. And ultimately, developer optimization is not there as well. So we're not thinking about optimization as part of the SDLC, a software development lifecycle. And the complexity of the integration. Integrated AI cloud environments become more complex. Optimization becomes even more critical. We're moving into a ubiquitous, very heterogeneous world where we're going to be leveraging systems and clouds of all types and all brands, sometimes micro clouds, sometimes on-prem, managed service providers, things like that. And the complexity is getting to a point where it's difficult to manage these things. So management complexity and operations at scale, and the ability to optimize through this complexity is something that enterprises are dealing with right now, and they're failing at it. So the challenges for implementing effective cloud optimization: manual processes. Over half the organizations cite manual processes as a barrier to cloud optimization. So no one's automating things. And this drives me nuts. And I used to see this within my clients. In other words, they do not have the ability to optimize because they're not thinking about optimization processes and automation to make it happen. So, this is leading to delayed, missed optimization opportunities. Overspending is occurring everywhere. Limited visibility and control. So ultimately, as the survey found out, 62% of organizations are making mistakes worth 25,000 USD per month. And so it's bad. You're bleeding cash. And by the way, that's cash that could go back into the business that would be able to do other things that are more strategically valuable to the business. So this isn't just about spending too much. This is about missed opportunities that the business is able to chase: acquisitions, growth, innovation, because they're spending too much money on cloud because of the under optimization of that technology. And of course, the technological changes. Everything's evolving, new services, pricing, and the optimization techniques, are emerging, and you have to keep up with the changes to maintain the optimized environment. So the point, and we're getting to the solution of this, is going to be a matter of abstraction and automation. This is between the people who are consuming the cloud resources, developers, users, things like that, and the cloud resources themselves, and the ability to put volatility into that domain. Which means how many any kind of technological evolutions that you go through over the next several years, that abstraction is going to remove you from having to deal with those complexities directly. So automated processes and monitoring ultimately becomes the game changer here. So again, automation is your friend. It's kind of scary for organizations because they have to turn things over to automated processes and toolkits to make these things happen. But if you're doing things in a manual way, there's an overwhelming chance that you're under-optimized, you're making core mistakes, and you're also causing things like performance issues and security issues, because we can't have sustainable optimization and management techniques that just occur through manual processes. You can't have someone who's tweaking something every day, looking at a screen. That won't scale, that won't work. We have to think of different approach. So you have to look at an automated routine to opportunities, realization of tasks, identifying owners, notifications, how are you going to support things? And ultimately, workflows need to occur without human intervention. So it doesn't mean humans aren't valuable. They need to be the higher level of support here when things are elevated to them, but they shouldn't be first level support. They shouldn't be the people that are dealing with when we're dealing with optimization techniques. And so we're dealing with automation ultimately is the way to do this. Real-time insights, the ability to look at policy-driven systems that provide insights in resource utilization, performance metrics, and cost. This is key to this. In other words, we're able to see Not through our abstraction layers, the ability to monitor the automation of the systems, the cost utilization, the optimization utilization. So we can see directly how the under optimization and how the performance issues and how the cost disadvantages are affecting the systems directly, and therefore how much resources is being removed from the business. So you have a dashboard to see that. Leveraging automated scaling, the ability to look at auto scaling policies, we're able to find metrics, and this allows the resources to be dynamically adjusted as demands, and this prevents over provisioning. So you have automation, which is able to align with the needs of the applications, the needs of the data sets, instead of over provisioning these systems through some of the manual processes out there, the ability to auto scale and auto contract as needed. So the optimization is occurring with the scaling. Configure intelligent agents, the ability to have alerting systems and notify the teams when usage patterns are deviating from expected norms. So all of this comes down to the core theme of this, is that this is about removing human beings from having to deal with this stuff. This is about using automated systems to guide you through the cost optimization stuff and become dependent on those systems as tools that'll take you to the next level, and mainly tools that'll return millions of dollars back to the business. Resource tagging and management, you have to have that as key to visibility. You have to develop a tagging strategy to make sure that you are tracking information such as project, environment, owner, cost centers, all these sorts of things. So we know what's being utilized, the resources and the cost centers, and we're able to track it back to a consumer of the resource, whether it's an application, data set, something else. Look at tag-based recording. If we're going to monitor these things at these very sense of granularity through these tagging systems, this allows precise cost allocation and helps identify optimization opportunities. Again, if we see what's coming back from the various resources, from the various consumers and how they're using these resources, and we have the fine-grained understanding of that, we're able to use these tags to figure out where the resources are being drained and what's using in an under-optimized way, what resources need to be attacked, where do we need to put human resources in redeveloping and re-optimizing these systems. You have to implement the automated tagging, use a cloud provider, third-party tools, AWS, Microsoft, and Google all provide this capability. And then you have to enforce tag compliance, the ability to implement policies that you have to do tagging before resources are provisioned. And you can make this as part of your governance solution in dealing with developers and administrators and people who are leveraging the cloud-based system. There has to be a consistent way that we're using these systems and we're identifying the resources and how they're going to be tracked. So right-sizing resources, ultimately it's finding the perfect fit. This is not about doing without. People always get into the optimization stuff and they get a little scared because they're afraid that the resource is going to be extracted from them. And therefore, they're not going to be able to leverage the resources that they feel they need to do their job as developers, administrators, people who are carrying out database operations, things like that. Nothing is could be further from the truth. This is about optimizing the needs and the requirements of the applications with the amount of resources that you're able to leverage, and also the ability to optimize in an ongoing way. So you're always going to address demand with the perfect amount of resources. And by doing that, you're not going to be over provisioning, even under provisioning resources. You're going to be using the exact amount. If you think about it, that was the early promise of cloud computing, the scalability, elasticity of the cloud. That, for some reason, got out of control. People are allocating resources and provisioning resources without rhyme or reason and planning and governance of those systems, and therefore they're not returning money back to the system. So you have to analyze the usage patterns, look at for the optimization opportunities, implement the right sizing changes. In other words, what needs to be deprovisioned, how you can provision different, and then monitor and iterate. So after you implement the changes, you make sure you're monitoring the performance. So we're knowing how these things are affecting, how they're behaving, and how they're working. So the costly mistake of excessive log and data retention, and I see this all the time. So you have to have retention practices. You have to review your organization's log and data retention policies to make sure it's balanced in order to the needs of the business. So ultimately we can overlog and we can underlog. We can store lots of data, we can store no data. There has to be a happy medium between the two. So people are storing, in many instances, redundant data that's being tracked in two different places. This causes erroneous information. You're not finding the log management systems. You're not getting the information in terms of what's really happening within the system itself, observability techniques. Define clear retention policies, how the data is going to be retained and what you're going to do when you retain the data, and then implement proactive lifecycle management. Utilize cloud provider tools, third parties to automate data lifecycle management. You're looking for redundant data. You're looking for different storage tiers. You're not holding data longer than you need it. And then regular policy review with the human beings, sitting down with the developers, the DevOps engineers, database administrators, the system owners, and review the policies and make sure we're gathering enough information, but not too much. Addressing the issues of incorrect resource sizing, huge problem. And according to our survey, we know it's a huge problem. 49% of respondents report using resources that are too large for their needs. And I see this all the time. You got to remember, cloud is particularly very convenient in the fact we're able to allocate as many resources as we need in terms of storage and databases and compute. So we're constantly looking at that and overcorrecting. In other words, I hear this all the time. You can't allocate too many resources. You can't. You can waste huge amounts of money. And that seems to be an epidemic out there. This leads to unnecessary cost. And again, the better safe than sorry mechanism approach, lack of understanding of the resources. People who are allocating the resources, normally they should be done through a process where there's governance in terms of how they're able to leverage those resources, and the tags that are able to be done need to understand how much resources the demand actually needs. Looking for systemic approaches for resource sizing, resource utilization, looking at the cloud provider sizing for the particular recommendations for your use case, and then the impact. If you're correctly sizing resources, organizations can significantly reduce their cloud spending without compromising performance. Again, you're not giving anything up. We're not asking people to do without. And this goes to all aspects of cloud computing. What we're asking people to do is to leverage automated systems to optimize the utilization of resources that are going to be directly aligned with the demand. And while that seems like a simple concept, it is as a survey points out, it is something that's just often violated. It's something that I see all the time. And it's just tossing money out the window. If you're not using these resources, but you're paying for them, since you don't own the physical piece of hardware, that's money that could be spent elsewhere. You're just basically pushing out to another unnecessarily non-important reason. Hidden cost of running development systems off hours. Identify idle resources, the ability to look for idle resources, shut them down or reallocate them. This includes virtual machines, databases, other systems. Educate developer teams. So sit down with your developer teams to have them understand how they're dealing with resources, and they know exactly what they're doing when they allocate resources. In many instances, developers are giving carte blanche to go out and leverage as many resources that they believe they're going to need. Normally, they're not infrastructure engineers, they're developers. And so they have a tendency to systemically over provision these resources that we just previously talked about. You have to educate them on how to do it. Implement scheduling, utilize third-party scheduling solutions to automate shutdown resources that are not going to be needed during off hours. This can save you millions of dollars a year, and I've seen it work. So people will allocate resources and just keep them running, where you can shut down or reduce those resources in times where they're not going to be utilized. Monitor and optimize, the ability to review the scheduling policies and adjust them as needed. So again, this is about putting a pragmatic approach to optimization, looking at how we're leveraging the resources, looking at the time they're leveraged, looking at the amount of resources that need to be leveraged, and your ability to put cost metrics around that, and therefore your ability to understand how much those resources are impacting the business, utilization of cloud, and then taking steps to optimize those resources. Resource lifecycle automation allows you to get to optimal efficiency. Again, define your policies. Establish a clear, comprehensive policy for resource lifecycle management. And this should cover everything from usage monitoring, scaling, retirement of those resources, and when they should be retired and when they should be put away. Implement automation. Again, back to this. Manual processes are going to be poison for your ability to automate these systems. Look for tools such as Stacklet and as solutions to automate the execution of these policies, the ability to have governance around these cloud cost spends, and your ability to do things in a way where you're able to automate the configuration of the resources, the monitoring of the resources, and your ability to return more value back to the business. Monitor and alert, implement monitoring systems to track the execution of these policies, and make sure we're alerted when people step out of the bounds. and then review and optimize. In other words, we're iterating through this as we're putting these resource lifecycle automations in place and these policies in place. We have to review them with the humans, have to review them with other system owners. Have to remember, cloud is typically touching many organizations and a large Global 2000 company. They all need to be on board with what we're doing here and have buy-in into this. This is as much of a cultural change as it is a change in technology. So strategic AI deployment for cost management. You have to access the AI workload requirements when you're dealing with AI. So you got to remember that AI is going to have a different utilization pattern and a different consumption patterns than many of the applications you currently have running. Typically, there's some AI that's already there. You're supporting it, and it's been around for a long period of time. You got to remember, AI was created in the 50s, and we're just re-pushing ourselves into that world today with the notion of generative AI and the ability to bring this innovative value into the business. That's all well and good. I'm not pushing back on AI, but they're going to be resource consumers, huge resource consumers. Typical AI systems consume 3 to 5 times the resources of another analog using traditional technology. So if you have 2 systems do the same thing, one's utilizing AI, one is using traditional technology, the one utilizing AI is going to be incredibly expensive and a huge user of resources, storage, compute, storage for training data, inference engines, compute, and sometimes the compute systems that they're leveraging are extremely expensive. Price what a GPU-based server is out on a cloud provider versus a traditional CPU. Incredibly more expensive because it costs the cloud providers more. So you need to use them and allocate those resources in a much more careful way. Optimize the compute resources. Leverage AI instance types offered by the cloud provider. Typically the AI systems and cloud providers is turnkey. It's a path of least resistance of building AI systems because they provide you with a complete ecosystem there. But you have to look at the resources you're leveraging and look at the resource and cost optimization aspects of each of those. Implement data tiering. You're designing a data strategy that is able to utilize different tiers or types of storage to deal with different needs. So there's no reason to have high performance memory only storage for every part of the operation. Your ability to leverage different kinds of storage with different kind of performance and therefore different kind of cost impacts is going to be important. The idea that we're going to put everything on high performing systems that are going to cost 5 times as much is something that just won't scale from a cost perspective. And again, continuous optimization. You have to review the performance policies. You have to review what tools you're using. You have to review how you're training the AI model. You have to review how the inference engine is working. And you're using cost metrics, your cost governance systems, and you're looking at tools in terms of looking at how we're consuming those resources and how we're going to optimize those resources to make them better. 9 times out of 10, when I look at an AI system that's deployed in the cloud and I look at the resources that they're leveraging, there wasn't a lot of forethought and thinking in terms of resource utilization. People view AI as something that's fairly new. It's kind of new technology to them. They get confused about the number and provisioning of resources there. And therefore, they're building these systems that are incredibly expensive. Certainly, if you're building a large language model, these are absolutely going to blow the bank up. You're going to get $100,000, $200,000 cloud bills at the end of the month if you're not careful. So part of an AI deployment would be a resource optimization plan that comes around it. And that's always part of my architecture when I do generative AI systems. So we figure out what we're using, what those resources mean, how we're cost optimizing those resources, and then putting in tools such as Stacklet to make sure that we're adhering to these things and putting the automation in place and putting the policies in place to make this work. So looking at cost-aware policies early in the life cycle. This is key to this. In other words, what are we doing and what is the plan to optimize these systems? What policies do we need to optimize these systems? So you define cost guidelines. Look for cost considerations. Developing process includes best practices, defining acceptable resource usage parameters. Integrating cost tools, best practices and policies for integrating these systems. Tools such as Stacklet directly into the development pipeline allow developers to see the potential cost impact of their design decisions in real time. Absolutely imperative. So in other words, as part of the software development lifecycle and part of the DevOps tool chain, they should have the ability to see the impact of what they're doing. So in other words, making code changes, making changes in application may not seem to be a big deal from a functionality standpoint from a developer, but it can have huge impacts in the utilization of resources. And their ability to see that in real time is going to be absolutely imperative to getting to a better place. Create an incentive program that rewards development teams for putting cost-efficient solutions in place. One of the things I did when I was a CTO and I ran development teams, I used to give away gift cards at the end of the month for anybody who could reduce the amount of resources we're leveraging and put other cost efficiencies in place. There should be some sort of a recognition that's in there and some sort of proof data that understands what they're doing and the impact that they're having. You'll find that developers, administrators will get on board with that rather quickly, not because of the bribery aspect to it, but because of the fact they look at it as an accomplishment. They feel good about doing it. And that's what you're trying to promote. And then look at the cost reviews. Review sessions as part of the development lifecycle. Make sure you're identifying areas for improvement and you're sharing best practices. So in other words, what have we done? What has everybody come up with in terms of our ability to optimize those resources and use those resources in a better play? And we're sharing those practices among the team. So in other words, we're using the cost optimization automation systems that we're putting in place, things like Stacklet, and we're bringing back core data points that are going to tell us what was done to improve it. And we're not just keeping that within the domain of the brain of a single developer who's working on the team. It's going to be team-wide. And the ability to share these best practices and allow you to come up with better ways to optimize these systems. They're not going to be helpful if they're just kept localized to a particular team or a particular person. And I see that all the time. So share with what you need. You need to have the automated systems to make that happen. Chat ops, all these things should be part of your DevOps tool chain and your ability to leverage automation tools to make that occur. Continuous usage optimization and workflow. You have to look at how you're going to utilize the cloud providers tools and third-party solutions on your own policies to gather the data you're going to need for the resource utilization. You need to adjust based on the assessments and finding. So we look at what's going on, we adjust. If we see better ways or paths to optimization, we're leveraging automation scripter tools to make these changes efficient across the environment. And then we're enforcing guardrails. We are able to establish guardrails or systems that notifies the appropriate teams when usage patterns or how they're using the resource deviate from the norms that are defined within the policies. So when new optimization opportunities are defined, we're able to implement them immediate and prevent costly mistakes. In other words, we're putting, not only creating the policies, but putting governance in place around how we're going to leverage these cost controls and how we're going to enforce the utilization of these policies. And these aren't something that's the developers and the administrators are going to find that are going to be stifling. They're going to find them comforting because they're going to keep them out of trouble. In other words, they're going to allow them to do their jobs better, not having to think entirely about having them to have the cost optimization task, which is put upon their shoulders. We're automating around those techniques. We're automating how we're going to share best practices, automating the policies, and that's where you want to be. And analyze and iterate. After you implement these changes, look at how we're impacting performance and costs. And we're having team discussions and we're looking at the effectiveness of the optimization. We're looking at any consequences that are there. Some of these things are going to have to be tweaked, and we're able to use these insights to refine these strategies to get to a more optimized state. So preparing for the future cloud optimization challenge, number one, stay informed. Keep abreast of emerging cloud technologies, pricing models, things like that. If you're attending this webinar, by the way, you're staying informed. You're looking at the problem, how other people are analyzing the problem, and you're looking at potential solutions like Stacklet you're able to bring to bear on the problem. And not that this is about throwing tools at the issue, but this is about understanding the problems you're looking to solve and selecting the strategic partners that you need to provide you with the automation that we talked about, provide you with the technology we talked about, that's able to assist you in making this a reality. This is not something you can do manually. This is not going to be done on an Excel spreadsheet. This is a layer of automation that needs to occur between yourself, the consumers of the resources, the developers, and the resources themselves. Invest in automation. So advanced automation will be a key to managing your optimization needs. Automate, automate, automate. Again, not throwing tools at the problem. We're doing a plan. We're doing a strategic investment in these tooling and training, changing the culture, having an understanding how we're leveraging these systems, understanding the resources that are there and the requirements. But we have to put automation in to make these things occur. We can't do these things through the manual processes, which is what's happening 9 times out of 10 these days. They're not even using the native tools on the cloud for some of this stuff. So they're just doing manual processes and hoping for the best, and that's how we got in trouble. Implement preventative guardrails, implement planning guardrails to prevent or trigger workflows to rapidly prevent costly misconfigurations. Again, put policies around that. This relieves the people, the developers and the administrators from worrying about making mistakes. Not that they're not going to make mistakes, but are able to put policy guardrails around these situations, then the number of mistakes they're going to make is going to be rapidly reduced. And we're putting the onus for optimization and enforcement of the policies on the automation, not on the people. The automation is going to be consistent, and it's going to work across teams in much the same way. The people are always going to work differently based on their training. So foster cross-functional collaboration. Again, this becomes, as a cloud cost become tied to business outcomes, this becomes a cross-functional approach. Ultimately, that would be critical to the optimization. We're not into this as a single team. We're not into this as an individual, not even into this as a department. We're into this as a company. We're leveraging this resource and leveraging these assets, and the ability to leverage these assets in ways that can be much more efficient than we're doing these days is ultimately the goal here. So conclusion, the path to cloud optimization, excellence, you have to embrace continuous improvement. Just by the fact you're listening to this webinar, as I mentioned earlier, you're looking to constantly learn new things. You're an autodidact. You're trying to figure out what opportunities to optimize some of the cost optimization techniques you currently have in place. And chances are you have a manual process in place, very little understanding of how that cloud bill is generated at the end of the month, because you're not optimizing the cost, and you're not alone. Most of the organizations out there that I deal with, Global 2000, don't have these things in place. So continuously improve. And this is about a lot of little battles that win the bigger war. Looking at the culture, making an understanding, having people understand cost optimization and why it's needed, why the program needs to be in place, why it needs to be funded, tooling you can leverage, approaches to the processes, defining your own requirements. That's going to be important to all of this, but also asking the questions all the time. How can we make this better? How can we make this better? How can we make this better? Leverage automation and data-driven decision-making. Can't stress that enough. Automation is key to all this stuff. So again, tools out there to help you, tools like Stacklet, and you can leverage them and look at their value and how they're able to bring it in, figure out how you can configure it into your strategy, and how that tool is going to be configured to maximize your ability to get the most out of your cloud resources. And balance the cost and innovation. While cost optimization is critical, it shouldn't come at the expense of innovation. So in other words, we're, again, not trying to shut anything down. People get confused when they hear about cost optimization. You're taking key resources that I need to do my business. You're taking key resources that I need to be innovative. You're taking key resources that I need to leverage my AI system you told me to build. This is not about that. This is about using resources smartly in such a way where you're going to free up more resources, more money, to bring more innovation back to the business. So your ability to be innovative is not going to be curtailed. Indeed, as more money, cost comes back to the organization, you're able to spend that on new innovations. In other words, you're able to free up some resources that you're able to do different things for the business. In many instances, we're going to find that organizations are going to be cutting their cloud costs in half, but not giving up anything. They haven't given up a single application. In fact, they probably improved the utilization of resources and found ways where they can provide more resources to some applications that need it. And all that money comes back to the organization. You can go out and buy technology, buy companies, build products, all that stuff that companies need to do. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over.
Thanks, David. Seems like you can buy a lot of stuff by just saving money in the cloud.
Yeah, it's absolutely an imperative. I mean, the thing is, people don't realize that that's money that does no good for the business. So we're not just saving money that is free money. And so the money can always go back into the business resources, go back into the budgets. and be reallocated for other more strategic purposes for the business. And we're not talking about chump change here. We're talking about millions of dollars a year that can be saved for many of the organizations. And we're not giving anything up. We're just doing better with the resources that were allocated. And what we're saying here is that you need to look at the plan, you need to look at your own issues, and you need to look at opportunities for automation, things like Stacklet.
Well, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. For those of you who don't know, Stacklet provides an industry-leading usage optimization and governance platform. What makes us really unique is not only our ability to find the most optimization opportunities, because we have support for over 500 resource type, including some of the new AI services that are coming up. But we also help you rapidly reduce waste by automating various notification and remediation workflows. And at the same time, we talked about prevention, right? The big stat about how potentially folks are missing out on 25 grand worth of opportunities on Stacklet. By using Stacklet, they can capture those opportunities. So we really help you prevent those as well. So if you're interested in learning more, I would strongly advise go to stacklet.io/FinOps and book a demo with us, and we would love to show you how Stacklet can help.
Check it out. This is important that you do this, make the effort to move forward, have a strategy in place, and look at the available technology. And again, you're not going to give anything up. This stuff's going to pay for itself in a very short period of time, and you're going to return many more resources and much more business value back to the business. So it's absolutely an imperative that we do this now in 2024, 2025.
Great. Thank you so much. Yes, Chris, we'll have the deck available as well, and the recording would be available in a few minutes automatically as well, because there were a lot of good content shared. I hope everybody found the content useful. Just wanted to thank David again for his time and his invaluable insight. That was a lot of content. I took a lot of notes, even though I looked at the deck before. I learned a lot, so I'm hoping a lot of folks on this call learned a lot as well. And like I said before, we would love to show you Stacklet. If you want to go to stacklet.io and request a demo, we would love to show you how Stacklet can help you reduce waste and prevent waste in the future. Thanks, everyone.